Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Kelly, yep, I'm here.
Okay. And Mr. Campbell.
Yes, here.
Hi, Pete.
Hi.
All right. So let's why don't we go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. We're gonna go a little off road here. We're gonna make Joe lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So Joe, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today.
All right. I pledge allegiance
To the
to
flag.
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with freedom and liberty for all.
I want you to make note of what the way that Mr. Garrett did that. He's from the North Country, so they do a little different up there. So,
Oh,
not
really?
wrong, not wrong, just different.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go into a work session, just kind of a reminder for everybody. You know, our normal meeting format, we, take questions and dialogue. In work session, we work through issues and we hold the questions from the public until we get to the public input part. So having said that, let's go ahead and lean in on the energy aggregation project, which Mr. Garrett is here to talk about. Loretta, would you like to lead us into the discussion, and then Joe can take it from there.
Well, actually, Joe led us through the process for our initial ballot issue and the vote of the public to initiate energy aggregation. And I believe that was in 2018, November 2018. Was it that long, or 2019, Joe?
I think 19. I can look that up while we're talking here.
I think 18
Well,
we voted on it. On 19,
I think 18 was the vote, yes. So now
Right.
I'm seeing, because we entered the agreement in December of 2018. So it had to have been on the 2018 ballot. And we've just come through our first full cycle of having Trebell Service as our broker, and the initial gas and electric contracts that we had entered at that time, both with Dynegy, correct?
Yes.
So now those contracts will be expiring, I believe, in June. I forget if it's the first of the month or end of the month.
It's the end of May.
Okay, so by the 1st of June, these contracts have expired. So what Joe has to provide to us is updated negotiations and contracts to be considered, right?
Correct.
So Joe, you have the floor. It's all yours.
Okay. I'll start with electric. So we went out to bid. We received 2 bids. Normally you receive more, but that's what we got. The good part is we got 2 of the stronger bidders did bid. So that's a good thing. We bid, and I don't know if you guys, we emailed those out, but we did a 12-month, a 12, 24, 36-month timeframes. Just to leave room for questions, we're going to recommend Energy Harbor on a 24-month contract. They provided us a price of 0.0463 per kilowatt, fixed rate for residential, a 0.04840 for commercial, or we could do a combination and have one rate for both at 0.04640. Our recommendation is going to be to do the 0.0463 for the residential and the 0.4840 for commercial, just because we have a lot more residents in the program than you have commercial, because commercial has some different tariffs and other things that make it easier for them to get even lower rates out on the market on their own. And it doesn't seem to make sense to raise the residents' cost. It almost looks like we're subsidizing the businesses, and we don't need to. We don't feel like that's something that communities would appreciate. So that's going to be the recommendation on the electric. Electric in general, Duke is resetting their price. We're expected to see it's going to go up. The utilities all utilities prices, their cost to compare prices, the standard choice offer is going to be increasing. So we're in a position, sometimes you can be in a position where you get the utilities high and you get a really low price and the utility comes down, which is kind of what happened last time. Okay, so the last time the utility was higher, we got a lower price, and then the utilities started to fall. This is a situation where we're still better than the utility by a decent amount, but we think the utilities are going to climb. So we should see an increase in the gap over time instead of a decrease. So that's the recommendation on the Energy Harbor. The motion that we would be looking for would be a motion to enter into a 24-month contract with Energy Harbor to provide electric for the electric aggregation program. So that's, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now on the electric portion.
The only thing I note is that rate is actually lower than the rate we're coming out of, correct?
Yes, that's true.
0.04985.
Yes. Yeah, our experience is people like lower rates.
Yeah.
As long as the service is the same, that,
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah.
So as a general question from my knowledge, in the area, do you have a sense of what the unaggregated general price is currently through the local utility, Synergy or Duke Energy?
Yeah, last time I looked, it was they were at 5.3 through the end of March. And like I said, that's supposed to be going up. So the reason we say it's supposed to be going up, just so you know, do you like to be called Pete or Dr. Pete or Dr. Which one? I always like the guys that have their PhD. I always like to put the doctor in there, even when they tell me I don't need to, because I feel like they've earned it. So, what are you comfortable with?
Pete is fine, and I'm sorry that you missed my call and I missed your call, but I did read through your packet in detail.
Okay.
I'm out of town currently.
Okay, so the utilities, as part of deregulation, how they get to their standard price offering, like their default, is now done through auctions. So they go out to auctions at certain times during the year. Okay, they're predetermined times. They go out on the market and they bid big amounts of their power, and anybody can bid on it. Okay, and what they do then is they average, they average the price on those auctions over, the period of time. And what happens is then when they have so many that, let's just say it's 4 auctions that they average. Well, then when they go out for that next auction, one comes off, one comes on, one falls off. You follow me? And so if the stuff that is falling off is lower and the stuff that's coming in is higher, that average price is going to be higher. Right? Do you follow me?
Yes.
Okay. So that's been the case here on the auctions. So that tells us their price has got to go up. So that's why we're saying that you'll see they're at 5.3, but we're anticipating that to go up.
It's kind of like, Pete, when I go to visit you at your office and you send me your bill, I can predict within, plus or minus 2 that my blood pressure is going to go up when I see the
bill.
So Joe, I guess what relative time frame are we talking, like you anticipate to go up over the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? I know you probably can only forecast out so far, but.
Right. Well, we think it's going to go up relatively soon. Like in the next few months, it's going to increase. Now, the reason we're recommending 24 instead of 36 is there is some questions around capacity charges that make up a part of the electric cost. which are still unknown because the PUCO has reworked the formula for creating those capacity charges. So that may or may not have an effect on the markets as well. But again, right now that's an unknown, but we're anticipating that it's going to start rising. And keep in mind, there's been no input from a political perspective that has been released yet, but all indications are that's going to have an upward push on rates as well.
So, and it looks like you actually get a diminishing return on 36 months where it goes down to 24 and then it goes back up a little from 24 to
Well, yeah. And it's one of those things where there's risk, right? So as you know, we see our job for the township is helping manage, and managing the program is managing risk. Okay. And so when you have an unknown out there, you have to say, well, there's a risk. And the difference between those two price offers is really not a lot when converted into dollars. And so it just doesn't, for us, we don't feel that the dollar savings to the consumer is worth the potential risk to a larger dollar loss later on. So we always like to be able to go back out to bid and check the market when we know all the variables. So.
Gotcha.
And this will lock us in for 24 months. So even if Energy Harbor goes up in that period of time, we're locked in at that rate, right?
Correct. Right. Because there is some talk there about some legislation to potentially reverse HB6. I haven't really heard anything recently on that. I don't know if you have. Maybe you have. But if that was to happen, we're locked in, so it won't matter.
Right.
Joe, what if the reverse happens? I see no early termination fee. Can you pop out of this thing and go bid it again? Or are you locked in?
Well, they're not going to change it. They're not going to change it. The only reason we would have to go out and bid it again would be as if they cease to exist. If they went through bankruptcy and said, hey, we're shutting down. I see that as highly, highly unlikely. They might do a reorganizational bankruptcy, even though they just came out of one. But I'm not saying I know they're going to do that. There's no indication that that's going to happen. I would think all the new investors they just brought in when they changed over here not too long ago from First Energy Solutions to Energy Harbor probably did not do that with that intention, but that's just an opinion. But so if they cease to exist, then yes, we would go out and rebid. I think that's highly unlikely. I think they will. Though they have we got a contract. They'll have to. That's not a change of law event. The only way they're allowed to change pricing is change of law events. That's not a change of law event.
Right now, go ahead. I'm sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
The residents, however, can opt out at any time without penalty. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. They can opt out at any time. They can also opt in at any time.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah. So we send a letter to people that aren't eligible to let them know what the rates are and everything, and give them information on what they need to do and who they need to call, which they can call us to get into the program. And people do join. We do see, people do come, people do go. We see lately, we see a lot of people coming back and they're staying put because they leave for like one of those special deals. And then when the special deal that introductory period runs out and their bill gets shot up to 10, 11 cents a kilowatt, they come back in a pretty big hurry. That's actually happening more and more. That we're seeing more of a. I actually had a township trustee, believe it or not, brought me his bill, and he had done that. And we had just taken over that program from another broker. But he brought me his bill. Now, he wasn't a very big user, so it didn't stick out because he just didn't use that much power. But he was paying 15 cents a kilowatt, 3 times any normal price. Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. But that's happening a lot.
I got a call from a resident over by Twigs, and IGS was going around soliciting business from the residents over there. on Amberwood and Twig and all that. So
Yeah.
I guess they know our contract was coming up. So.
Yeah, it's all on the PUCO site. They can see that. They're one of the ones that is a heavy internet and door-to-door marketer.
Mhm.
And typically not very good pricing.
Yeah.
And we used to bid them, and I think the gas contract there in Pierce was IGS before, and they've kind of not really been much of a player there in the aggregation world. But I guess if you can sign people up for 6-7 cents a kilowatt, that's what they're, I guess, happy doing.
Mhm. Now, did you want to talk also, speaking of gas, did you want to start talking about the gas aggregation as well?
Yes, because we have both of them to go over. This one, unfortunately, I think is going to be pretty clear. So gas has, of course, been a little bit volatile. It's run up. There again, we had that event in Texas, affects everybody. Not nearly as much as it affected the folks down there, but it does affect us because of where gas getting put on into the system and whatnot. So Volunteer is the best bid here. We are not happy with the fixed rate, and let me mention this for Trustee Pete there. When we talk about gas, it's a little different than electric, because gas is really only used for 3 months. That's the big usage time frame there in the. That's when you really have to gear your thinking towards where we're going to be during those 3 months of the year. So that being said, we don't think the fixed prices offered here are probably as good as they could potentially be. So our recommendation is going to be to do the 24 months with Volunteer at a NYMEX plus the fixed adder. So what that means is it's a variable rate. So the NYMEX is the commodity trading market. So gas is traded. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I got Alan on my screen and he looked like he was froze. So I thought, uh-oh.
He does that periodically, strokes out.
So the NYMEX moves up and down and settles every month. So
Just kidding.
What it does is whatever that NYMEX settles at, you add the 0.095 on top of it, and then that's the rate to the resident. Now, the reason we're suggesting this is, keep in mind we're talking about this flowing in June. Nobody's using gas in June. Volunteer gives us the opportunity to convert this program into a fixed rate program at some point in the future. Our expectation is that we could see some lower rates here this summer on natural gas that would make a fixed rate a good deal. But of course, the market is the market and we have to play the market. So our recommendation is to go with Volunteer on a 24-month NYMEX plus fixed adder. And then we will come back to you if we see the gas rates dropping to the point where the fixed adder is going to be, and then convert this to fixed price before next winter.
But Joe, just to be clear, the NYMEX whatever adder that allows you to be flexible, right? Once you take that out, then you're locked in. Is that what you're saying? So
what it is, Nick, is the NYMEX is the commodity of natural gas, what it's traded at, and they have a settlement price every month. If you type in NYMEX historic chart, it's going to pop up, okay, and you can look at it. And it fluctuates. That's just the trading. So how natural gas is priced is the cost of, let's just call it your raw material. And then all your overhead margin, everything else, profit gets added on to that. Okay. You follow me?
Yeah.
And so what we do is we fix that portion of it so it can't move. So that 0.095 is all that ever gets added. So they can't add more profit, or they can't say, well, our costs we just build a new whatever, we're going to add that in. They can't do that. And so you fix that, but it's going to move up and down based on where the NYMEX goes. So if the NYMEX goes up to 325, you're going to add in, it'd be 32 cents plus 0.095 to get your cost for that month. If the NYMEX goes down, you add that to that. Again, you're just adding that. It's going to trade, and I could look it up. I think last time I looked, it was like 250. But what we like about doing that NYMEX Plus with Volunteer right now is we don't want to go with that fixed price because we think we can get a better fixed price later on this summer. And so we want to go with this NYMEX Plus now when nobody's using any natural gas. They're not using it. So we can convert it over to a fixed rate later when the prices will be lower.
What was the term again?
24 month.
And the other bidder didn't even give you a NYMEX price, right?
No.
I got you.
This past winter made some folks pretty gun shy in the natural gas markets. I'll just tell you that.
Could I ask a quick question? Are both of these plans, the electric and the gas, the types where there, I guess you commonly call them opt-out plans, where 100% of the citizens appears are automatically in the plan and stay in the plan unless and until they choose to opt out? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, but I would not say 100%. It's only to be eligible to be in the plan. You have to either be at the utility or already in the aggregation.
Okay.
So if you signed up, when that IGS guy knocked on your door, if you signed up with them, you will not be eligible to be in the program. You won't automatically go into it.
Okay.
If you are like a PIP customer where you have the government subsidies you're excluded.
Okay.
But now that said, that person that signed up with an alternate supplier, if their program runs out in 6 months, they can always join the program.
Yeah. Okay.
But they don't get automatically so they don't get automatically pulled. You don't break a contract, right? So all those people have signed some type of contractual obligation.
Right.
You don't pull them out of there. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be good just to remind everyone that, those opt-out letters are sent by Duke Energy, based upon Duke Energy's list of eligible customers, correct?
Right. So
And
sometimes
so explain a little bit about those mailings that go to the citizens. and when that
okay.
happens.
So what happens is the data, the opt-out. So in this case, Energy Harbor and Volunteer Energy will get the list from Duke for electric and natural gas customers that are that show being eligible to be in the program. Now they can make a mistake, which is outside our control. Duke can have somebody classified wrong. We've had a lot of times where they'll have like a small area on a border someplace. They won't have it included in into the proper township. Or you'll have somebody that will call up and say, well, I was with them and I didn't get one. Well, if they've already pulled the data and they're getting the letters, because they have to pull the data, they have to get the opt-out letter, has to be approved at PCO. That takes 10 days. Then it has to be printed and mailed and then get to people. If they had opted out of their program and gone back to the utility in that 3 weeks leading up to that, they may still show as an ineligible customer, right? Because the data is so you can get a few calls. Again, there's not a large volume there. We will get you the letters before they hit people's doors, so you have them. And that first letter goes out from the supplier that you select to enter a contract with. They send those out. People have 28 days to opt out. About 21 days, or 7 days prior, the utility will send a letter, which is a little confusing. And this is where you'll generate some calls. You're going to generate some calls on the opt out because whenever you change suppliers, people go, wait a second, weren't we with this group? And now this is saying we're going to be with this group. They get a little concerned. So not a lot of calls, but you will get some calls them wanting to make sure that this is on the up and up, right? And then you'll get more, and we see more people opt out when the letter from the utility goes out, because the letter from the utility only has to state and talk about the rules for aggregation as set up by the PUCO. So that doesn't say, hey, there's no termination fees. It doesn't say, hey, there's no switching fees. There's no other fees. It says there could be. And that's what they say. And it scares some people. And so we'll see people drop out from that. And then those will be the people that probably initiate the phone calls. And then after, when those go out, we will send out a letter, which we'll also send you a copy of. It's just a letter that I stated where we let people know that weren't eligible. Here's the program. If you want to do something, give us a call. Those don't tend to create very many phone calls for the township. It's usually that change when people first get the opt-outs. You'll see a little bit of activity, but not as much, because you've had an aggregation program now. So you won't see as much as you did the first time around at all. But you will see some phone calls.
Could you answer one other question? And that is, if someone is a new resident, moves from a property that had been in the program, and they're coming from another address, therefore they're putting that Duke bill now in their name, are they excluded from the program then unless they ask to be in it?
So that all depends on the timing, right? So if they have moved in and they're with Duke and they've set up their account, when we pull the data, they will be included. If they move in after we pull that data and they set up their account, they will not, and they will have to call to get into the program.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so what happens to all of the Amelia citizens who are now part of Pierce? They weren't part of the original aggregation, I don't think. So what happens to them?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just sitting here going, I'm forgetting something. So on the electric, we were able to go back and get the portion of Amelia residents that are in Pierce Township into the program. So we should be good there. Now, what's going to create the calls for you guys this time around, potentially, is that we're going to now pick those people up in the natural gas program. And most of those folks, I'm assuming, since they're in a village, are going to be eligible for they're going to have natural gas, right? The natural gas program is not as prevalent. There's not as many people have natural gas in the township. There's areas where there is no natural gas, but in the village, you're going to have all natural gas. So we will send the opt-out for the electric. Like I said, the Amelia residents are included in that. We have participation there. The natural gas will now include those people in the Amelia portion. There may be some, that's a border where, again, they have mapping software, the utilities do, but they don't, for some reason, they don't always. There's a possibility that we could get a few people that are in the other townships portion of Amelia might get included, and there might be a few that are in the Pierce portion that might get excluded. And all we can really do is fix those as those people call, because again, we're relying on, we're not the generators of the data, but they will be included.
Are you the distributor of the data, Joe?
We do. We bring the data in and we look at it, and so that we have a copy, so that if there are issues, we know what they've got.
Is there a way you could wash that through Loretta or somebody with our staff to do a quick run over of it and as another check.
Well, as a former mail house owner who did a lot of data manipulation work as part of their business, that makes me very nervous because you can do it like in a view only setting, yes. But these things work on a time frame, Nick. They're, we've got to get things moving along. And we can fix as we go, but we can't wait. Does that make sense? So if we see an issue, we can definitely address it and be working on it, but we can't stop the process from going unless it's unless it's like, wait a second, none of these people, all these people are in Kentucky, but if it's something like that, we're going to catch that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's cool as long as like it's a couple and not like the entire other side of the street, like it's what happened last time with the.
Well, and that can
Right.
happen. That can happen because they have that whole street. They're not splitting the street in the middle. That can happen. I can try to see if I can get a version for her to look at if she would like to. My experience typically is even if she does, I don't know that she'll catch it. She'd be able to catch it all, but it's definitely another look. If that's what you guys want to do, I will inquire about that and get back to you on that.
Well, within reason would be my thought, if you can eliminate some kind of large error in that regard within reason, and it's,
Well, so, and I guess you guys have your legal counsel on here. The other argument against it has been that there is some privacy concern. Do we want, as soon as that list goes to you, it's in the public realm. There's some consumer privacy because that thing can have has account numbers. It might show where people have multiple accounts. That might show who's government subsidized. I get what you're saying. I guess I'm just, again, risk management. Is that risk worth being able to fix 10 or 15 wrong addresses? I'm not saying there will be. Well, I'm not saying there will be wrong addresses. But I'm saying usually when it happens, it usually is a pretty small percentage. On the electric side, I don't see too big of a problem because we already have the Amelia portion in there, right? We know what numbers we're looking at. And we know some numbers. I know the numbers. I mean, I know the number of households. So what we kind of do is look at what the quantity is they're telling us. But that's why I say we're not going to be off 1,000 homes. We're going to notice that. We're going to be off 15. So the question is how much risk potential do we want putting out in the public realm for those 15 that we may or may. That's up to you.
You could just take and eliminate all of those columns and just give me the street list.
Okay.
And that's all we need to, if it has an address number and street, we can just spot check that. I mean, we've snowplowed all the streets now. We know all the streets
Right.
quite well. So it would be pretty quick. Between
I
street
will-
lights and snow plowing, I think we pretty much know what we have.
Right. Yeah, and especially if you do that, if you look for odds and evens. So the case like where Nick's saying is, one side of the street's odd, one side of the street's even as far as their street number. So you'd be able to tell, hey, are we getting both sides? Do we only have one side? You could be able to do that pretty quickly. All I can tell you is I can try to do that. I have to inquire. Can I get that? Okay. I have to inquire. We have not done that. So
It's going to be what you get from Duke. And from what I understand, it's common to limited database, Excel spreadsheet. So if anybody can if you're afraid that I see it first, they could just wipe out the columns that I don't need and just show me those. I mean,
Right.
at minimum streets, if you can't even put the address number on
Yeah.
it. Then
I don't think it's a problem. I just don't want to promise you something that we haven't done, that there might be something that I don't know because I haven't done it. So that's all. I can't speak to that, but I agree with you. I do know the data side. I don't think it would be that difficult to do. But again, until we do it, I just don't want to make the error of making a mistake because of something I don't know.
So my suggestion would be, Loretta, if you could just provide a list, alphabetical list of those street names that you know are ours, just provide that to Joe. And then Joe can do a first level screen on his end, and that would limit how much work you have to do conceivably. So let's say Joe's company does a first level screen of those addresses, and then in turn sends back any questionable addresses or streets to you. How about that? Maybe save you some time.
That may or may not, but I mean, we'd have more confidence if we get to review it. But if you want, we do have a street list. I think that the service department's maintained. I believe that the Amelia information is updated. That's the only piece I'm not as sure of, but we can do that. And we have a list of all the private versus public streets too.
So Loretta, just check on that and then get that over to Joe so he can cross-check.
Mhm.
Does that sound okay, Joe?
Yeah, we can do that. If either one of those options, we have two options that one of them should work.
Right.
So we should be able to check it, yes. Whether it's
And-
us or you, we'll be able to check it.
And I don't know how many streets are, I mean, I don't think we're talking about very many streets where it's, right side, left side that we split other than 125.
I was gonna say, I think it's
Batavia
just that
Township.
state route, isn't it? It goes right
Yeah,
through the
I think-
middle.
And you just have to make sure that the streets that are on the others, that are on the northern side of 125 aren't included in your list.
Right,
But those will be whole streets.
right. Yeah,
So if Loretta can get that base list, and you can just make sure those streets are on, and if you see one that's not, kick it out.
okay.
Or just send me an email.
Yeah,
So I'm out.
yeah, we'll probably, yeah, it will, if we find that, we'll have to do a little bit more work than to just immediately kick them out. We'll have to figure
Yeah.
out, yeah, but yes, I agree. Yes, it's workable
But the
solution.
process can begin. Right.
Yes.
All right, do we have any more questions? Hearing none. What action do we need to take right now?
So we need to make a motion and pass it to, and we'll just start with the gas. We'll
Okay.
make a motion to enter into a contract with Volunteer Energy to provide natural gas to the gas aggregation program for 24 months on a NYMEX plus fixed adder. That's it. And then on okay, so if you want to do that one, and then we can move to electric, or I can give you the work, what we need to do on the electric too.
You want separate
Let's,
motions, don't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. Let's go ahead and take care of the gas one first. And if you could email that language to Debbie to make sure that she has the proper language in the minutes. That'd be
Okay.
great.
okay.
Do we have a motion?
Alan,
Yes.
Alan, did you want to run over the participation thing real quick if we're going to move on a motion in case anybody else is on the call?
No,
I don't see any,
call.
but we got a couple
No.
people I don't recognize. It's up to you. Just want to be sure. Cover our
No,
bases.
we're going to move forward. Unless Tom tells me there's some legal reason I need to.
There's no reason to wait. You can move forward.
No. I wasn't talking about that. I was just talking about the *9, on the phone, raise your hand.
Now,
say
we'll,
thing.
we'll take questions. As I said in the beginning, we'll take questions on the public comment.
I will second.
So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes. All right,
Okay, then the next
Second.
one will be, we need a motion to enter into a contract with Energy Harbor to provide electric generation for 24 months to the Pierce Township Electric Aggregation Program.
I will make the motion.
Second.
all right. Nick's made the motion. Pete has seconded. Any Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
And then lastly, so how this works is I will get the contracts, send them over today. Then I need to get them signed and get them back so we can turn them in so our pricing doesn't move. So we would need a motion to this. Now this is assuming you guys are okay with the administrator signing the contracts for the township with Energy Harbor and then also with Volunteer. We would need a motion to allow the administrator to sign the Energy Harbor and the Volunteer contracts on behalf of the township.
I
Unless you
believe
guys,
that's the way we did it.
it was, but the
Go ahead, John.
motion, I believe the motion we made, Alan, was for non-contract type of information was, because there's things that need to be signed from time to time, like the PCO requires recertification. We have to get a signature every year to get the data so we can get data updated. And I think that motion was to allow the administrator or any elected official to sign on the township's behalf, because that's not something, that's a kind of an administrative function that doesn't necessarily need to come in front of the whole board every time to get a yes, and requires a little bit quicker reaction. A contract signing like this, we've always just had our townships and other clients make that motion at the time, just because this is the actual contract where we're actually picking a supplier.
Mhm.
So that's up to you guys. So that's why we've always just said, hey, when we do it, that way it's, we don't have to dig back 10 years to find out, that other motion we did at the same time we approved the suppliers. But that's up to you guys.
I think it would be good if you authorize the administrator or elected official, because I think Debbie's kind of the backup if for any reason I wasn't available. Then you have an elected official that can carry forward if somebody's in and somebody's out. And I think Debbie might have even signed some last time.
Okay, so the motion would then be that we would allow the administrator and the fiscal officer to sign the documents, correct?
I would
Sure,
do,
there's some better.
I agree with Loretta. I would do any elected official,
Okay,
and the administrator or any elected official. And I would say
Okay.
to sign the contracts on the township's behalf. I would do
Okay.
because we're doing the contracts.
Debbie, did you get that?
I got it.
I'm guessing you'd want me to at least approve it as to form, because I think the companies would be looking for that. So, Loretta, you can send them to me, Loretta.
Well, we have to have these things like same day, next day. Most legal counsel, and the last time we did this, Tom, because these contracts are done with our legal counsel,
Yeah.
which was the last time that you said it was one of the best contracts that you'd seen written for government agencies in your years. Because I guess the point is that these supplier contracts have been negotiated to the point where there is no more negotiation. They're boilerplate. Here it is, take it or leave it. And it's mostly a take.
Yeah.
But there is a time element here because you have a market, right? And that market can change, and it can change daily. And so if we're going to do review, if you can review quickly, then that's great. But if we can't wait 3 or 4 days.
Now, why don't we just leave it that Loretta will look at it, and if she has a question, she can call me, then we'll discuss it.
Okay, good.
Well, I don't think that needs to be in the motion necessarily.
No.
I just think that's understood.
That's
Yeah.
understood. Good.
Okay. So Debbie, you have
Can I throw
a ru-
Can I throw this out, Alan, since we have, and Tom, if there's ever any questions, you have access to let us know, and you can have access to our legal counsel. If there's any like energy specific questions from a legal standpoint, we can also make our legal counsel available.
Good.
Perfect. Debbie, do you have the motion?
Yeah, I have here motion to have administrator and or any elected official to sign contracts on behalf of the township.
For, let's make sure we add in there for the electric aggregation programs.
Electric
Energy
and gas.
aggregation programs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
make it broad. Yeah, make
we-
it broader.
We don't know, we need Alan buying dump trucks on his own.
You don't want that. Nobody wants that.
Okay. On behalf of the township for energy aggregation program.
Yeah.
Programs.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make the
Make the
motion.
motion. Second.
Okay, so Nick made the motion, Pete seconded. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes,
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes,
Thank you.
That's all we needed. I will email, as soon as I get the contracts, I'll email them to Loretta and copy Debbie, so you both have them. And do you guys want me to, I'm happy to stay on the meeting till we get to public comment in case there's any questions from residents, or I can take off now. It's up to you guys.
why don't you stick around for the public comment part?
You got it. I will.
And then we can, we'll circle back, but you know, you don't have to listen into this.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
send you a text when we're ready.
okay.
All right, cool.
Yep.
All right,
Thank
guys, let's go into something even more exciting. Let's talk about the waste levy. You guys saw the chart that, I don't know who put that together, whether it's put together by Loretta, Debbie, Claudia,
Claudia,
or a combination.
Yeah,
Claudia Sue?
we have updates that are going to be on the slideshow now, that are a little different than the last ones that went in your packet.
Okay, can we get those up on the screen so everybody can see them? Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, just 1 second here.
Are these updates of the waste levy, the two spreadsheets, as it were, that you're talking about? Okay.
Does it look better or worse?
It's refined.
Oh, wow, that means it's worse.
Eddie, is there any way you could also, it's a little bit easier for me to be able to open them in a different window. Can you also quickly email them, and that way I can open it up and look at it separately? It's a little bit easier for me.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
I'm proud to say Claudia worked on this very hard for the last week on this. She actually started doing this graph back in 2016 when you and
She's
I.
been working on it a long time then, huh?
Long time, yeah.
Not that one.
And
That's not it.
so we were able to get some pretty close, accurate numbers, kind of got them all figured out. And you will see on, not this chart here, but you'll see pre-Amelia and then after, and then with Amelia.
Yeah, the
And
one that's on the screen is not the one that we,
that's not the one we did, no.
there's
Oh, okay.
an excellent spreadsheet that takes us through the years.
Yes,
It's there. I got it up there. Just so many.
and we used the, for the tax year of 2020, for the 21
There we go.
numbers. So, which includes the
Okay.
rollbacks and everything.
Yeah, so the chart is now up on the screen for
Yeah.
everybody to look at and kind of walk through. This first one is obviously, as the header would say, it says pre-Amelia.
Mhm.
And so it walks us through in the columns. It shows us the revenue versus the expenses for each of those years.
Mhm.
And you'll note that in 2022, which is when the levy is due for renewal,
Mhm.
according to this particular chart. Now, this has been refined, as Loretta said, right?
Yes.
Yes, and hopefully I just forwarded to all of you the PDF version of these sheets. I just did my whole group list, except for Eddie, who already had it.
So if you look down the 2022 column, Pete and Nick, do you guys have it in front of you at this
Yes.
point? Okay. You'll notice that we would, at the year-end balance of 2022, we would be sitting at, I think that number says 60,274 and some change.
Yes, sir.
We would have a positive balance going into the end of that year under normal circumstances.
Right.
Now, if we could go to the second chart now. Okay. Post Amelia, you'll now see the same chart, just recalibrated for the inclusion of the new, what is now the new Pierce Township. And at the end of that chart, at the bottom of 2022, bottom right hand, you'll notice it now says negative 110,829.87. So that we would be in the negative by the end of 2022. And we would probably, it looks as though we would go underwater sometime around, I don't know, it looks like about June or July. Would you say that's about true, Debbie?
Yeah, yeah.
We are due up for a levy renewal or, well, the levy is due in 2022. In theory, we would have decided to go in May and or November. Just say, just assuming that, if we put it on the May ballot, it passed, great. If it didn't, then we could come back in the November ballot and try to do it again. However, this would indicate that we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. And so May would be doable, but we would only, if it didn't pass, we obviously wouldn't have enough money to continue the program. And even if it did pass, we wouldn't have enough money to finish the program out. Because as you know, the taxes are paid in arrears. And so we would have a shortfall by the end of the year. And we'd have to do some retrofitting to make that work. We really wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because we have, the way I see it, just me, and I'm sure, I think Debbie agrees, and Loretta, it may be that we have to put it on the ballot for November of this year in order to make sure that we have the resources to get the waste levy to the end of 2022 and beyond. But this is for discussion. I don't know that we're asking for any kind of action. We just want to make everybody aware of it. Action is going to need to be taken. But since this is kind of the first blush of this that you guys have had an opportunity to see, we just wanted to start the dialogue today, the discussion today, so then we can move forward with action items in subsequent meetings. So with that, then I'll shut up. Debbie, Loretta, if you guys would like to jump in and make comment here, please do.
Can I ask a quick question before we do that?
No,
No. It's a data source question. So I was looking at all that tax, I guess this came from the auditor, tax year 2020 for each township. So is our data for estimated revenue 2021 essentially from that information? Is that where we
Yeah.
derived that? Okay.
Right.
Okay. I thought so. I just wanted to clarify.
yeah. We went in and used, I called Chris Melman earlier, and just to verify our numbers and everything with him, where this money all comes from. And it comes from residential, agricultural, other being commercial, industrial, which we don't have a whole lot of, the public utilities and others.
I think
The
that
other question that I had along those lines is, does this reflect the valuation increases that we've just now seen in our tax bills? Is
Isn't the
Chris
total-
Wellman using up-to-date?
These
Go
are
ahead,
up,
Nick.
Isn't the total fixed? regardless of the valuation?
You
No,
mean-
I mean, if your house was originally valued at 200,000 and the revaluation goes to, to 250, you might pay an extra dollar into whatever system. But you're
The
right, the top
effective rate-
line is fixed.
Yeah.
So,
The effective rate is reduced for increases in valuation because a levy will only generate a certain amount of dollars. It won't continue to escalate. Because it is also, I think one of the questions we could
my
ask the
question's now answered.
Okay, I think we could ask the county auditor's office, though, in the meantime, if we were proposing even investigating a levy to put on the ballot for November, we could ask him to calculate for us the difference between a new renewal levy versus a replacement levy, so that they'll have to look at those values blended, with the new community that we have, and make sure that we have better solid numbers moving forward. The other concerns as we project these numbers forward is we know that the fuel surcharges are going up. We know that our contract with Rumpke expires May of next year, so we'll be having to write a new bid for that and accept new bids for that. This one has escalated 3.9% every year, and in terms of the base collection cost. So when you project this out another 5 years, that number is going to increase, quite a bit when we look at a new levy. So the amount that we're generating now is close to, amounts that we were generating in earlier years. You can see that we're not, under our existing conditions when we did a renewal levy, when prior levies were replacement levies, we're not capturing all that new value anymore. So that effective rate keeps going down. So we don't get all of that full value. We get a little bump in new construction, but then it levels out when they redistribute that across. So even though you have the 2.3 mil levy, I think it is, the effective rate actually paid is lower than that. So I think that we should consider, and Debbie can do this informally without a resolution, just ask the county auditor's office to project for us moving forward in 2022 if we did a renewal versus replacement levy.
Yeah, I think that would be a smart move so that we can make decisions.
That's what we did
Even if we
before.
didn't.
Alan, if you remember,
Yeah.
we did that before when we were
Right.
working back in, you and I came on board.
That's right.
And
So yeah, I would certainly recommend that we do that so that we can make decisions between, this board. And certainly provide that information to the public as well.
How often do we pay Rumpke? When do we pay those bills throughout the year?
monthly,
So that's the only other thing is this is just a question. I know you guys have worked on this. I haven't been as hands-on with the process, but looking at it, it looks like if we're going to go red 110,000 into 2022, then wouldn't the point at which we go red be later in the year than 6 months in? Because if you look at 1.1 million total expenses, 1.149, and you just take 110 as a percentage, you would think it would be sometime in like October or November that we would start to go red.
again, Nick, we don't have that crystal ball where we can go in and predict what's what, because there's other things that we pay out of the waste levy too. So like we have the rollback taxes, that come out. So we try to put in this graph, everything that has come out over the last years. So, things are going up. So,
Well, and I think another way to answer that question, I think you're right, Nick. I mean, it probably would be a little bit later than say June or July. But the thing is that we don't really collect. We won't be collecting what we would be paying for the second half of that year
right.
until 2023. Does that make sense?
Yeah, till the very beginning of 2023, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And
So
so
you're going to have about half of that income halfway through the year, and then you have to wait for the other half.
correct. And so we would, if we're not collecting it, you would start to realize that negative a lot quicker. But if we have a levy in place, then we know, that if it happens in May, even if we start to go red in June, July, August, or October, we know where that revenue is coming from to fill that gap. And so we can do some things, as I said earlier, we can do some things to fill that gap until we get to, when the funds come in. But if we fail the levy, then the question is how are we going to cover that remaining cost?
Loretta and I were talking too, in regards, once the village closes its doors, and we receive what funds we do receive, I think we would need to put some of those funds into the waste levy to cover some of those shortages that we're going to be having, just to be on the safe side. But I don't know what that would be as of right now.
Right. Well, and I've got a little bit later on, I'll give you a little update on some legislation moving through that may shed some light on this as well.
Okay. Appreciate that.
As a part of our discussion, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but as a part of our discussion, are we going to be discussing multifamily policy today?
I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
So I think it's about $11,000 a month of our bill is from multifamily units. Now, some of those are condominiums, and historically you treat those like single family. The other thing to notice is that as there's still a lot of units being built quickly, in Amelia as well, those properties demand garbage collection the day they're occupied, even though they haven't necessarily paid taxes yet. So there's a whole lot of variables that affect these numbers. But we have apartments that are getting dumpster service, which surprised me. A lot of times, once a property has dumpsters and it's all rental, it's a commercial property, and it's not eligible for collection under most single family programs. So that's something that would save some amount of money for us if we were to remove those services as commercial properties using dumpsters. But I don't know if that's a change we can make before our Rumpke contract expires.
I guess as a matter of just policy in general, I mean, thank you for that. I think that would be a wise step to take.
Other commercial businesses don't receive the
Right,
benefit.
exactly.
Is that written specifically in the contract? I've not noticed.
Only in the Rumpke contract. So we get the supposedly, the way it's written, it would imply that the owner of the commercial property would have a bill from Rumpke for their dumpsters, whatever they want, and they would get a credit on their bill for whatever 4 of our units would cost for a 3 cubic yard dumpster. So try to figure that out. So I'm trying to audit the apartments like we do the streetlights to see if I think that, perhaps we're, overpaying for 3 cubic yard dumpsters with $15 per unit per month times 4. I'm not sure. But it seems that we're just getting billed that, and there's no relationship between Rumpke and the actual owners of those properties anymore. Therefore, some of those properties that we've seen that we're inheriting, for instance, that have become apartments rather than condominiums as they originally designed, have no connection with their garbage. They just have cans everywhere and no accountability, and they're really not necessarily following the rules that were intended for treatment of single family curbside units.
So if we remove that from the contract, we may not be able to do it for this contract moving forward. So, because you're saying that we're spending $11,000 per month, put that out across a full year, you're looking at over $100,000 that we're paying in multifamily that perhaps we should not be.
Right.
I think it's worth studying because, but
Mhm.
you know, again, you need to think about condominium units versus rental apartment units. And that's something that's just evolved over the years. As we know, some former condominiums have converted into rental apartments, really.
And Loretta, on the condo units, I guess I'm asking for some education here. Don't most condo associations handle trash management for their complexes?
If they have dumpster service, but otherwise, a lot of times they're treated, if they're single unit ownership, if they're created as a condominium style complex, they usually have dumpsters instead because it's easier to manage by the association and keep the property clean. When you have
Right.
these trash cans everywhere, you have them falling over in litter and no one responsible except for those individuals.
Right.
Well, I think that gives us 2 action items as of right now. The one action item is, let's do the audit of these multifamilies and see what the savings or not would be. So then we can factor that into a projection moving forward. And then 2, let's have Debbie work with the auditor's office to come up with those 2 scenarios, one with the renewal, which would be my preference if we could do it. And 2, you know, what would be a potential increase if we needed to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, so that way we can come back again with a subsequent meeting and have some more data that we can operate off of to make a decision. Nick?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Anyway, but Pete, to your point, all of this is for education purposes. We're all, you know, trying to make the right decision by getting the right data, and that's the important part. So that's why we wanted to bring it in front of everybody so that so that we could get everyone's input and thoughts so we can make the right decision moving forward. Anything else we want to discuss at the moment on the waste levy? Loretta?
I think those are the important points. I believe that if you wanted to put something on the ballot this November, you have to have the documentation to the county around August. Is that correct?
I think so. But then we'd have to take action. Debbie, if memory serves, the last time we did this, we had to have the action taken by the board no later than July, so we could get it to the Board of Elections by the deadline in August. So we'd have to do a motion in June or July to make sure that we had it properly done to present to the Board of Elections for their next meeting.
Right.
So we would need to take action sometime in June. We'll be prepared to take action in June.
So do you want to do that? Do you want me to get with the auditor's office
Yes.
now?
Yeah, it's just to run the numbers,
Okay.
because we're going to have to do a renewal at very least at some point. So
Okay.
let's get the data, and if the data supports a renewal, then hey, great.
Okay.
Then there's no tax increase. But if the data does not support that, then we'll have to start discussing walking down the other bridge.
Okay. When I take this new resolution over, I'll see if Chris is there and I can sit down with him and see.
Yeah, and that way, the next time we have this discussion, we can sit down and have Loretta's work done on multifamily to see how much that might save us.
Yeah.
And then how much revenue would be generated off of the 2 different types of levy approach.
Okay. Renewal or a new one. Okay.
Right. Obviously, my preference is a renewal.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's my preference. Yeah, I mean.
No, I agree. I'd like to see that. I'm very interested in that multifamily study to see if that'll help a little bit. I think it might.
All right, Alan, you got it, sir.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And by the way, tell Claudia, this was a great chart.
You did an excellent job on it. She worked very hard. She likes
Even though I didn't
Excel. She likes
like the refinement at all.
she likes spreadsheets. She's a Nikki kind of guy. She likes those spreadsheets.
There you go. There you go.
Right, Nick?
Exactly, just like me.
All right, unless there's any more discussion we want to have on at the moment on the waste levy, we're going to have a whole lot more discussion on waste levy moving forward. I think unless there's anything else we want to discuss on that subject, we can move on to street lighting updates. Eddie?
Or me?
Well,
I can give you the numbers.
Well, Eddie's
go-
got
oh, that's right.
There's a beautiful map that Eddie put together.
That's
The
true.
map
Just,
right now.
just tell me when you want the number of petitions returned.
There we go.
Nice.
All right. So just a brief explainer. So what this map shows, and I'll get my video up here. But the map shows a breakdown, more or less, of all of the kind of the primary lighting areas in the former Amelia Village. The green lots represent lighting fixtures along State Route 125/Main Street. The green illustrates that those are to remain. So we've worked with ODOT as well as Duke on those to make sure that they stay. The yellow areas represent locations that are kind of primarily in arterial areas along Oak Street and so forth, Maple, that are under review. And then, as you can see, the other remaining areas are subdivisions. The blue subdivisions, Quail Creek, condos, Woodside Park, and Klein Station, for example, they're governed by HOAs. So they are working to maintain their street lighting and control. Klein Station, for example, is presently building out. And so they're just kind of on cruise control as far as maintaining their own lighting. Where it does get a little bit different is obviously with Sedona Ridge, which is the larger of the two red highlighted subdivisions, and then the smaller one is Quail Creek. Those are currently both undergoing the petition process. And so I'll use that as a segue to Loretta.
Well, does everyone understand the map? Any questions on that so far?
Are those our green street lights on 125? Those don't include Batavia's, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think
Also-
the other thing that I think is important to note are these, I guess they're yellow footballs. Those are some of the streets that are potentially the lights could stay on. It's up to us where we need to have the discussion. If we are so inclined, but you'll notice that, it's along, you're looking at Oak Street / Jenny Land. You're looking at the streets that are, near the post office, library. Looks like we've got Huntsman's Trace. Part of it could continue to be lit. And then, of course, we're going to keep the lights around the parks would stay on as well.
I think as we do that, at least from my perspective, we look at the other areas of the township that may be somewhat similar and what we're doing, if anything, there.
This is pretty identical to what we've done in the rest of the township. This is not inconsistent. We don't do lighting districts, so therefore in our subdivisions there aren't lights. Like, for instance, in Nick's subdivision, there's no street lights except for key areas, and some of those are ours and some of those belong to someone else. But we just don't traditionally do the subdivision. So Legendary Run's not lit. Nick's area isn't lit. over by Twig, and those areas, there aren't streetlights back there. So this is pretty consistent with what we've done in the past. The good thing is that that between Loretta and Tom and with Eddie, they've come up with what I think is an innovative solution, which allows the community to pick up the lights where traditionally, the lights would just go off. And this is not inconsistent. I mean, Sedona Ridge wouldn't be inconsistent with what's happening in Legendary Run right now. Legendary Run has its own lighting district, but they have an HOA. So we're kind of retrofitting this without the HOA, just inserting the user instead of the HOA. That's what the petitions are all about, and where we stand on those is interesting. Loretta, sorry.
Well, on the map, I thought, first thing that was interesting to me, when you look just north of Sedona Ridge and you see that area, you almost feel like it must be part of Amelia, but it wasn't. It never was. It is Pierce Township, and that's Denny Lane. So that one obviously as well is a subdivision that's in Pierce Township, always has been, and it does not have any street lighting associated with it. The only thing the township tends to do is lighting of intersections for safety reasons.
But if those streets did decide they wanted to band together and have their own lighting district, they could go through the same process that Sedona Ridge and Quail Creek are going through right now. And so they could retrofit their own lighting district if they wanted to. And so this is in some ways the solution to the problem if people want it. They can use it in anywhere in the township they want to, but it doesn't end up being an added fixed cost for the township.
Correct. And individuals can adopt a light, for lack of a better word. However, we did ask the question of Duke Energy whether, if a citizen wanted to take one of these existing street lamps and just take one or two here or there, Duke said that they would have to start with a new agreement and I believe a new fixture. I'm not quite sure how these things are wired together or metered together. So they would have to look at those on an individual basis. Otherwise, residents just provide their own home lighting in most township situations. So what I do have for you then also is an update in terms of what's come in so far as in the petitions. So we had 505 that were mailed out for Sedona Ridge. So we have had about 76 of them returned, which is about 15% right now is where that's sitting. The Quail Creek mailing just went out March the 15th, and we've received 30 petitions back on that one, which is about 10%. There were 293 mailings on that one.
What's the time frame on this again?
Well, we generally on Sedona, we encourage people to respond in 3 weeks, and that's about this week or so, by the end of this month. But I'd asked the law director, there's not an absolute deadline other than what we self-impose.
Right. Yeah, their statute doesn't provide a deadline. It's what you trustees want to do.
Well, I guess they could indefinitely trickle in until they hit the percentage, right?
Yes.
As long as there's not a big change in ownership, I guess that would cause their petition to be invalid.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Well, and one thing that, that Eddie and I discussed is, making telephone calls into some of these residents to try to, chase out some of the petitions. Eddie's actually been doing some of that with the multi, I don't want to say multi-family, but Eddie, how would you describe
Single
the people
owners?
the folks you've been chasing? Yeah.
Yeah,
The rental companies.
right, like multi-lot owners and that sort of thing. There's a couple batches. We've gotten in touch with American Homes for Rent, just to make sure that they had received all the information that they needed and that it was getting to the right people. Because sometimes when you work with a corporation like that, we're sending it to Calabasas. So there's one letter going to Calabasas. Good luck. Hopefully it gets to the right person, sort of thing. You just, we use the auditor's information and that's it. But so I reached out to them just to make sure and they own 38 properties in Sedona Ridge, which is about 7% of the entirety of the development. And so they contacted me and said that they're reviewing the materials, and then they also requested a digital copy of the information as well. So we forwarded that along to them. I haven't heard back since, and that was early this week. It's probably around Monday, I believe.
So, I mean, if they sign off, then that's 38 units right there that get placed on top of the, what did you say, 78, 72, whatever it is, in Sedona Ridge. So that pumps you up over 100, and they need what, 250 to trigger the public meeting.
A little better than that.
Yeah, 255, something like that, 260. I mean, at some point, we are going to have a deadline that will be created because the village is going to go away. And right now, as long as the village is still in place, these lights are being paid for by the village treasury, not by us. I guess in a manner of speaking, it's being paid by us, but it's at the end of the day, when that village pulls the final plug, it's all on us. So there will be a deadline of sorts.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for Eddie to talk to those people, or for any citizen there, is so many people want to just stay out of it, and you can't here. If you don't vote, that's a no. You have to vote yes to make it a yes. So it's not, there's no abstentions. If they don't vote, that's treated as a no.
Right.
I do have a question about some specific lights, and also just to note that there's still a lot of problems getting Duke Energy to clear up the billing between the ODOT lights, even though we've already sent them account numbers and names and setups for both Batavia Township and Pierce Township sides. That's not necessarily been sorted off of the Amelia bill. And I don't believe the streetlights necessarily have, even though ODOT's taken responsibility for those. So it seems to be quite a tedious process to get Duke to even sort these bills out. And I hope that the homeowners associations that are managing their own are not having problems getting those transferred either. So that's just one point to make, and we're in regular communication with Duke Energy. And we've actually made sure that Duke Energy is in contact with Bill Gilpin with Amelia, because they've either lost bills or they keep emailing the same ones to Bill after instructions have been made to change those bills. So that's one aspect we're still working on. I wanted to bring up some of the ornamental lights. There's about 4 of them, maybe a couple. There's a couple within the old police department property. They're an old gas lamp style. Duke Energy said that they couldn't even replace those. They don't even exist anymore. And so they are also overshadowed by Cobra headlights that are in the same area on 125. So there's a couple on by the CVS and Fox and Fox near Oak Street, only on the Pierce Township side of the road. And I don't believe that there's a reason for us to continue to maintain and keep that lighting there, unless anyone has any other compelling reason for those lights to be continued.
I personally can't think of any, but you always want to be sensitive to the community. But if we're the landowner by the police department and we don't have a problem with discontinuing it, then let's go ahead and do that.
That's my recommendation. So I'll pursue that unless there's a problem.
I don't have one, but Nick and Pete may have another option.
Can't think of any.
Agreed. No objections.
So I think the other thing when you look at this map, it's pretty clear that right now it looks like about a little over a third of the village, the lights are are staying on or have the strong potential of staying on, because you've got what, those two subdivisions or three subdivisions that have, I think it's what, 2.5 that have HOAs that are going to cover, that are working to cover the lighting, and then where we're picking up, the lighting. At this point, it looks like we're about a third of the way, to keeping the lights on in Amelia. But we still have to wait on those two subdivisions to come in and see where we go from there. Any other questions, comments, concerns on the subject? Okay, well, Eddie, I think it's Eddie. We can move on to the next item on our work agenda, which is the zoning changes. Is this Eddie or is this Loretta?
I think that's Eddie.
Yep,
Okay.
I got it. I'm just this document here.
Unless in the meantime, you guys, Nick or Pete or anyone else, you have anything else you want to talk about with regard to the lighting district?
I'm a little bit surprised that the numbers are as low as they are. I would have expected more petitions to have been returned by now. We're what, 2.5, 3 weeks in?
Yeah,
Just about.
about 3 weeks. Yeah, I was a little surprised about that as well.
All right, I'll switch over now if everyone's ready.
Fire away. You've got the floor.
Okay, so this is the everyone should have in their packets are kind of the cover letter and just general fee review information for a number of different zoning applications and documents and things that we issue in the township. What I did was I took basically the permits, for instance, that make up the overwhelming lion's share of permits that we tend to issue, which are single family, fences, decks, swimming pools, that sort of thing. And those were the primary focus of the review. And as you can see, in total, that there were about 177 of these types of permits. Now, that's not all the permits that we issue in the township, but that's 177 in total. And then I also focused on areas where we are doing work, or we are producing a work product that there is currently there's no cost coverage. So, for example, zoning letters, which 2020 wasn't a great example. We issue a lot of information. We respond to a lot of information requests that are outside of like public records, where someone says, I just want to know if I do this and then I do that, and just hypothetical zoning determination letters where people contact us all the time about that sort of thing. And most jurisdictions charge for just the basic letter and the research that goes into it. We don't currently charge for that. So items where there is work or a cost being incurred that there is not a fee, those were also the other point of focus. So big batches of permits, as well as what are we doing that where we're incurring a cost but not actually generating any sort of revenue to cover that cost. So I compared our fees in these various categories to a number of different jurisdictions in the area. That is on the second page here. You can see Union, Miami, Batavia, Anderson, and then I also, for reference, show Amelia here as well for a point of reference. And ultimately, what you can see here is what the current fee is, as well as what the recommendation, and then the recommendation, the revenue with the recommendation would turn out to be. So with the proposed fees, which are in the green highlighted, the revenue comes out to about around $9,000 more a year. So that's just for 2020. So had we had these fees in place, the resulting revenues would probably be about $7,000 or $9,000 higher. For the most part, there were some highlights. For example, the single family, we were pretty severely deficient. Our fees were a bit lower than most other jurisdictions, so an increase of $100 is recommended there. The engineering fees is another big one. We've been getting very busy. We have things like traffic impact studies where sometimes a traffic engineer's review is needed. We don't really have a way to cover that cost right now, but we evaluated some other jurisdictions and came up with what I think is a pretty reasonable base charge plus amounts to exceed to cover our costs, that sort of thing. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, it's kind of the general breakdown.
None of this seemed out of line to me. I thought it was all very appropriate, relatively small increases. I think it's about time that we started charging for some of these things that were not charged previously.
I noticed that you decreased the temporary event fee. That is part of your recommendation, which is good.
Yep. Yes, some of these fees too. I think that a lot of times when they're originally created, there's temporary events a funny one because it looks like it was crafted with the anticipation that like the Ringling Brothers were coming to town, and so like okay, that's a reasonable fee. But then what we end up seeing is really a lot of neighborhoods and small, just individuals are just looking to host some very basic events like food truck event, things like that we don't want to stymie, but we want to promote as much as possible, that sort of neighborly community gathering sort of thing. But so that was kind of some of the reasoning behind that. So it's not always, fees don't always have to increase, so to speak. I think that sometimes there's logic in, balanced approach.
Eddie, you did an awesome job with this, man. Thank you.
Oh,
Makes
thanks.
it pretty easy, I think. It all looks really reasonable when you glance over. You can see everything laid out. Obviously, we probably needed to get with the times on some of this, just something we probably haven't visited in a long time, I would assume.
Yeah, I can tell you that the last time a fee was increased, I think it was single family only when Danny was here. So that was 2018 maybe. And during the pandemic, we were this has been on our list for a while, but we were a bit hesitant to cause any hardship for anyone by increasing fees. But obviously, we've also seen a missed opportunity because, there's been a lot of single family construction over this last year.
Well, all the money allows us as well to, continue to impart, we've hired Eddie recently and staff properly and, in theory, provide better service to people as well in some of these regards.
So before you can actually make a final recommendation, well, I think it would be great if you make a recommendation to have a resolution drafted, then we'll put this in the form of a resolution. So it'll be formally adopted with these fees in it. I presume that that's a better way to document rather than just a motion with this chart.
Right. I think a resolution is warranted here. So I would actually simply, if we wanted to do it as a motion, but I don't think we have to, recommend this to be placed on the agenda for our April the 14th meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound about right?
And a resolution drafted?
Yeah. Because I think I don't want to pass, fee structures on just a simple motion. I think it needs to be tracked by a physical resolution.
Debbie probably appreciates that. She'd be trying to figure out a lot of writing and specifics here.
You got it.
I also agree that a written resolution makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with the zoning laws of Pierce Township. I think that makes a lot of sense.
So let's just put this on the agenda for April the 14th, right? And then have the resolution drafted for that meeting.
Can do that.
Okay, if there's nothing more on that front, then let's roll on into new business then.
Ready?
I'm so ready for this.
I request a motion to rescind Resolution 2021-006 and replace it with Resolution 2021-008, a resolution authorizing adoption of the alternative method of apportionment of the undivided local government fund for calendar year 2022, that per the Ohio Revised Code Section 5747.53. This excludes the approval otherwise required of the legislative authority of the city located wholly or partially in the county with the greatest population.
So you'll recall we passed this at our last board meeting. Unfortunately, we were a little bit we were out over our skis a little bit, and the Township Association recommended the very next day a different language or different version of the motion that we passed. And so therefore, in order to be in accordance with the Township Association and the other townships in the county, we need to pass a new resolution covering this.
And just to note, there's a typo there. It's rescinding. You're going to rescind the prior.
Rescind, RESCIND. Yeah,
RESCIND.
that's right.
Oh, wait, that's not the way that goes. Not the way that goes. So, do we have a motion to, for this, for Debbie's motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
We have a
second.
motion. We have a motion and a second. Debbie, let's go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
And I'll get that over to Batavia.
Debbie, you get the second one too.
Yeah. As you know, we've been working on changing over from Fifth Third Bank to Park National, mainly because of the fees that Fifth Third has been charging us. And Park did the analysis, we won't have any fees. So I'm requesting a motion to move 200, I changed it to 200,000 instead of 500,000 from Fifth Third Bank to the new account at Park National.
Do we have a
I'll make
motion?
the motion.
Nick, okay.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions?
One question. Are we closing out completely with Fifth Third over
Eventually,
time?
yeah, over time. Eventually, we'll just probably have our credit card with Fifth Third.
Okay.
Yeah, they're charging us some outlandish service charges on both our HRA account and our general fund account. And when you maintain over $6-7 million in the general fund account and you're still being service charged, that's, and not getting any interest. So that's was the main thing.
Man, that is a horrible deal.
Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You want to do the roll call, please, Debbie?
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Cody, let's see what you got, man. This is your time to shine. Remember this name. Remember this name, Wally Pipp, okay?
Wally Pipp.
Do you know who Wally Pipp is?
Nope.
Okay, do you know who Lou Gehrig is?
Yeah.
Okay, so Wally Pipp was the starting first baseman for the New York Yankees. He got sick one day. He sat down on the bench. This young kid from AAA came in and got the start, and he never left for almost 3,000 games. So this is your Wally Pipp moment. Let's see if we can keep John on the sideline.
Sounds like a plan.
Fire when ready.
Poor John.
I request a motion to approve the appointment of Jake Ober as a full-time maintenance worker for the Service Department effective April 12th, 2021 at the established rate pending successful completion of all pre-employment requirements and a 1-year probationary period, nothing that all associated expenses related to these requirements be that of the township.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Where'd you stealing from?
He's coming from the county water.
Oh,
Ooh, that's nice. I like
Yeah.
stealing from them. That's nice. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes. There we go.
Thank you.
You didn't quite Wally Pippin, but he'll be back next month. You've got a lot to work on, Cody.
Hey, I'm okay with that.
So he says on the Zoom call. Okay, so I'm going to slip back. Joe, can you hear me? Joe?
Yes.
It would appear, Joe, that there's no public here to ask questions. So unless the rest of our gang that's still currently on the line would like to ask a question. If not, you're free to go. I know we're a lot of fun. But you're free to go.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks, guys.
And
All right, thank
you probably already have the email with our street list.
I have the Amelia Street list is what it said.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to
I
double
didn't, I
check.
didn't open it up.
You should get all of it.
Okay. And Loretta, you have the contract from Energy Harbor.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then I'll send you the other one as soon as I get it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you, Joe. All right. So we're now on to other business. Does anybody have anything in other business? I've got a couple things that I'll be brief about, but if anybody else has something, fire. Nobody? So we got a couple of pieces of legislation that everybody needs to be aware of. We have the American Recovery Plan. There's a bit of a glitch. I think many of you probably are aware that the House passed a version, the Senate passed a version. The Senate version does not include the word township in it. They call it unincorporated. They call it unincorporated jurisdictions. Hold on just a second. My battery's running low. So. I'm back. So they left that portion out of the Senate version of the bill. They passed the bill, and it's now up to Janet Yellen to try to determine what unincorporated means. They could pass it along to the states and then let the states decide how the formula works. Or they could just say that unincorporated jurisdictions, that's townships. So we're still kind of waiting to see how that works out. I will tell you that Congressman Wenstrup has been working very hard on this. Congressman Stivers has been working very hard on this as well, and so has Senator Portman and Senator Brown. So it's not without a tremendous amount of effort on the federal side, and our folks at the Ohio Township Association have been working pretty hard on this as well. Had a great conversation with them late last week. So they're hoping to have some headway. They've got about 60 days to get it done before the funds start to flow. There was some confusion about how the funds would flow to each of the townships if we were included. The last bill that passed had a formula that each county would use their local government fund formula to pass through to the local jurisdictions. That's not going to be the case in this bill. Since party changes occurred, the Democrats are a lot more command and control, so they gave specific numbers coming out of the bill. So there's a formula that comes out of the bill that's a direct a direct pay to the local jurisdiction. So when you see that Claremont County received 40 or 50 million dollars, that's 40 or 50 million dollars for Claremont County. We would get a separate allocation, assuming that allocation is worked out between the Senate and Janet Yellen's office. So we're still kind of waiting, but that could portend a sizable amount of revenue coming to Pierce Township. Well, actually all of the townships, assuming all of that can be worked out. So just stay tuned on that front. I also picked up some information about the dissolution bill that's being drafted relative to dissolving future jurisdictions. For the most part, the parade's already passed us. It's just at this point, creating a path so that if there are future dissolutions, they don't have to go through what we've all gone through, and they codify certain segments more effectively. But the one thing that bothered me is that coming out of the auditor's office, there's language inside that they're recommending for a bill that would tell us that we have to, like, for instance, if a dissolution occurs, in our case, they took all of the funds, the pots of money, the silos of revenue from Amelia, and they put them all together and they used that to pay off debt. Now what they're saying is they want to collapse those silos, but when the dissolve is complete and the revenue, if there's any residual revenue left over, then they want to shove it back out the other side and put it back into its silos when it's finished up. My argument to that was simply, don't tell us how to spend our money. You don't know how the dissolve has had an impact on our budgets. And you don't know how it would have an impact in, say, if it's Bethel or Batavia or, Timbuktu. You don't know how the jurisdiction that's accepting this dissolve is where their budget's going to be short. Case in point, if you look at the way the revenue flows from tax revenue, when you look at road and bridge, I think Amelia contributes will contribute about $60,000 a year in road and bridge funds to Pierce Township. But we all know that we need to put in more than $60,000 worth of repairs for many of the roads that are inside of Amelia. So, my pushback was simply to say, don't tell us how to spend the money when it comes out the other side. We know better how to spend revenue as it comes in and where it's needed to flow the most. I mean, for instance, if we want to improve the parks inside of Amelia, there would be no revenue to do that. And those are the needs that Amelia has right now. So I don't know that I need to have the auditor's office to tell me what those needs are. I know what they are better than he does. So anyway, so that was an interesting and fun discussion. But that's something that's on our horizon. And I warn us all about, because as the village starts to come to a complete close, that might be another twist that the auditor might throw at us. That's what his intentions are, to put it back into the silos. So that gets back to Debbie, what you had discussed about taking some of that revenue and filling, the waste levy. We may not have any choice. It may flow into the waste levy anyway, by direction of the state auditor. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that and give them a couple of legislative updates that could have an impact on us. And I think we lost Nick, so.
That's really interesting, Alan. That's
I'm
really,
here.
that's really interesting with,
I just figured people might get tired of looking at my mug.
Nah, we love you. It's so cute. We love your mug, really.
do you think this
Yep.
bill was brought about because of what we're going through? Were we the guinea pigs?
I think that we're starting to see more dissolutions across the state, and so there's not been a lot of there are laws on the books, as we know,
Right.
but a lot of these dissolutions are small towns that are kind of like Neville, a few years ago, and what's the other one here in Claremont that just recently dissolved with Amelia. I mean, those are small towns. They had a tough time getting people to run for city council. So those are kind of easy dissolutions. But Amelia was the first one with so many complex, things to resolve that I do think that it has a lot to do with Amelia.
Mhm.
And again, you could start to see more dissolutions over time. That we needed to have, some of the questions that we spent so much time on, they need to be defined and codified so that we know within, a fraction of an inch that this is how this is going to be resolved. You may not like how that's resolved,
Yeah.
but this is how it's going to be resolved.
Yeah.
They did, one version that I saw talked about, instead of having the mayor or, the lawyer or whatever to stick around, there would actually be someone appointed. So there would be, that person would have the powers of all three of those people.
Mhm.
So Bill Gilpin, Todd Hart, and Kathy Ryan, that would all be distilled into one person.
And that makes sense.
And they would run it. So somewhat like I don't know, for lack of a better term, a bankruptcy
Yeah.
approach.
Receiver.
You'd have a receiver put in place to deal with, how do each of the assets get resolved.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have to struggle anymore with, the hated mayor and all that, all of those issues. It would just be under one person who presumably would be outside of all of that.
That would make sense.
So there's no personal issues associated.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully there's an incentive for them to move quickly, because there'd be some compensation, I'm sure, for that person, whoever it is in that position.
Sure.
Likely. Yeah, likely. So, I mean, there's some movement, but, it's slow. It's not like right now the state of Ohio is focused on the budget. I did talk to, Senator Huffman about it. Senator Huffman was interested because he said, "Is there a lot of this?" And I said, "Well, there's actually more than you would think." And I said, "So, I think it's going to snowball from here." So, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of things moving, but the one thing that did, scare me is that if the auditor thinks he wants to put that into a bill moving forward, is he going to come back to the table at the end and say, "Oh, no, this is the way I want it done now,"
Mhm.
as a matter of my policy. And, I pushed back on that, but we'll see.
Is there going to be a point at which there'll be testimony or anything like that associated with this?
Yeah, we're probably a little ways away. I'm not so sure that I would see it. I mean, maybe it'll move faster than I think, but I haven't actually seen a hard copy of a bill yet, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe late summer, some testimony, late summer, early fall. But that's all I have. And then you all saw the story on Channel 9 about Beckjord, correct?
Yes.
So I did talk to that reporter, had a nice conversation. And she had many questions, and I pointed her in many directions to get the answers. But I think it's important when people are asked about why we would not comment on a story. I will point back to the last time Channel 9 did a story, I quoted, and I got a polite call from Nope saying, "You'll remember that you're on the board that oversees the Pierce Preserve and Trails, and you represent the township on that. That means you should keep your mouth shut." So Altman was kind of speaking, I guess, somewhat on our behalf in that story. So, but that's all I've got. I will now shut up officially.
Okay.
And we'll open it for public comment, open floor discussion. Seeing none, we can now move toward adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion to
Second.
adjourn. Second, Debbie. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes,
Thank you, guys.
thank you. See you
Thank you.
guys.
Tomorrow.
See ya.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Okay.
And come in and sign stuff
Yes.
Yes.
Please,
ASAP.
please. Thanks, guys.